that the things that happen in my life, they are either designed or allowed. And clinging to the reality or the truth for me that God loves me. And despite what I have to deal with in life, that love is unwavering and never failing. Helps me to reposition and shift my focus, right? You hear oftentimes that we look to the hills when it's come with our help, right?
Yes.
And I was looking to the hills. I had to look to the hills because how do you reconcile that, your child that you haven't, it was, as a matter of fact, that was one other piece in that happened in that is that so mom passed on that Sunday. The very next day, and Francois knows this well, our family has a barbecue restaurant. The very next day, our second restaurant location caught on fire. And
Mm.
and then her funeral was 3 days later. And so it was just a sort of onslaught. I mean, shortly thereafter, my uncle, her younger brother, passed away. It was just our cousin who helped start the restaurant, who's very close to my dad at the time. He passed away shortly after that. I mean, it was just a lot of life happening at one time where I felt like the Lord kept telling me, it's like, I got this. I'm in control. You may not understand it right now, and it doesn't feel good. It probably doesn't even make a whole lot of sense, but I've got this, and you trust in my truth. You trust in my word. And so, through definitely self-care and really believing that all things really do work together for good, is what I continue to cling to. And I just have to give a shout out to my husband because Lord have mercy. He I mean,
He's
just,
awesome.
oh my goodness, standing in the gap and praying for me and encouraging me when I couldn't encourage myself, because that's real. There are real times where we are just so overwhelmed and so overcome by what is going on and what's happening, that we just need people to encourage us, right? To help us
Yeah.
to put one foot in front of the other. I actually wrote a piece in a devotional, basically um, talking about how I learned during that time what standing in the gap meant. Like, oh, that means that there's somebody who is standing in this this gaping hole between where I am and where I need to be. And so since I
Wow.
can't seem to get
Yes.
across there myself, this person or these people are helping me along the way to get to the other side. And so um yeah, so that is without my faith, and to believe, to believe that the impossible can be done, I wouldn't have done, shoot, really any of the things that I've
But
done
you
in life. So,
but you've done it. And I mean, the thing that always has been so inspiring to me is your relationship. How do you and Michael, what are the keys to have that kind of relationship and love that you have? Because, we've had previous episodes where people didn't always have those great relationships, and they ended um very, very uh what's the word, tragically in some
hmm
cases, because a lot of people's lives were impacted by it. How have you all been able to, after all these years, stay so connected and keep the love going? What are some keys to that?
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, and particularly being two very motivated and
Yes.
driven and
Yes.
stretched people.
Yes.
It is very easy to become ships sailing in the night. But um, I think the biggest thing is that we're friends. Our relationship started off as friendship first and foremost. And, while I, you know, love my husband dearly, reality is that I tell him often, "You're my best friend," right? And
Oh,
the interesting thing is his father in the ministry who counseled us before we got married. He said that y'all make sure y'all have a good friendship. Y'all make sure you always stay friends because friends will talk when lovers won't. And I
yes,
said,
that's
you are
good.
so right. You are so right. And And so that's one of the things that has kept us also recognizing that we're on the same team. I mean,
Mm,
we are on the same team, and we really do see marriage as a calling towards a greater purpose. And so, um, whenever there are things that we feel led or called to do or feel drawn towards, we often come back and say, okay, so how does this move the team in the direction of our purpose, right? And so
mhm.
we consistently see our lives and our purpose intertwined, so that if there is a calling and a draw to do something, or if there is a pull to do something, then the question is how do we do it together? And that has always been a very critical element in our relationship. And then, quite frankly, just recognizing that the marriage is not a marriage of two, but a marriage of three, meaning that that God is first and foremost. Um, and sometimes, when the rigors of life come into play, it's difficult to maintain that commitment and that focus, but it's essential. And so, I would say first is that we're friends, and that we're best friends at that, and that we really do see each other as teammates, so that when there are those disagreements or those misunderstandings or miscommunications, you want to say same team, man, same team.
But Ulysses, you saying that makes me think about a friend of mine was telling me who has another marriage that's like yours that I call hashtag relationship goals. And she was saying that they set goals. Every
Hmm.
year they set goals as a husband and wife as to what they want to accomplish, not just individually, but collectively, what do they want to do? And I found that fascinating because quite often we don't have goals in our relationships. We have
Yeah.
them for ourselves and for our careers, and what we want to do with our lives, but we don't think about our lives in connection to, our spouses and our kids, and how do we set goals? And it sounds like for you all, you have done that where you set, we're on the same team, and this is how we're going to communicate and connect to each other, and the intentionality behind that. It sounds like you all have done that very well. I know I see it.
Well, we don't praise God for that, because that has been learned along the way. But yeah, absolutely, because when you think about marriage, we say it particularly in the Christian faith, but I think also in other faiths, this idea of two becoming one, right? So if we are one, then how do we set life goals not together? Like how do we say we one, but we don't act like one?
Right. That's true. Yes.
you know and so you're right. So it's recognizing that our lives and our paths are on the same journey, and that we're pressing towards the same goals and same purposes. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So, what has been your inspiration? Because you're inspiring, and for those of us who know you, you inspire us. But what's your inspiration? What gets you going?
Honestly, um people people inspire me, and I think recognizing the value and the awe of humankind. you know Clearly there are some not great aspects about humankind, but there is
Especially in
some
our current
marvelous.
environment.
Absolutely, especially in our current environment. But even within our current environment, there are, like I say, there are some fascinating aspects of humankind, where the life of people who dream and who envision and who create, um, it is just inspiring in general. I think about the work that I do, particularly in the space of criminal justice, and recognizing how often folks who have been justice system involved have been cast aside and disregarded and marginalized and dehumanized, and
Yes.
recognizing the depth of insight, the depth of wisdom, the depth of creativity and ingenuity that exists in just the human brain is just amazing and fascinating. And I always wonder, you know, who's the next person that will do this? Who's the next person that will discover, the cure to COVID,
Right.
or the vaccine for COVID?
Yes.
Who's the next person who will, create a musical masterpiece? Who's the next person? And so I always think about the value of the people with whom I engage and interact. And I'll be quite honest with you, my mother and father were inspirational, and particularly my dad, because he lived life to the fullest, in the sense that he recognized that you only have a certain amount of time on this world. And you can either, and he would say this all the time, he said, you will either spend your time or you will invest it. And he would ask, how are you investing your time today? Because the investment is not in just what you do, but whose life you change. And so I think that that's the inspiration that drives me on a regular basis, is this idea that I have so much time on this planet to make a mark and to give what has been given to me, and to pour out what has been poured into me. And so we work each day to do that, to make somebody else's life better, somebody else's road better. That's my inspiration.
You are, someone that I love, and I appreciate you both personally and professionally. We didn't really get a chance to talk about the work you do at Lone Star Justice Alliance, and I really do want to have you come back on another show for us to really dig into the criminal justice work that you are doing, and some of the things that I'm involved in that space, and talking about these amazing human beings that have made mistakes, and once they have paid their time, how do we as a society really begin to make sure that we're giving people the space to be the fullness of who they have been created to be? And so I want to spend some time with you in another episode talking about that. But as we close, tell folks how they can get in contact with you: websites, email. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to shoot me an email. I can be reached at YWaters, WATERS, at lsja.org. And honestly, that's the best way to get in contact with me. I will say I don't have a personal website just yet. My husband and I are working on that. But if anyone is interested in addressing, issues of race and issues of family, issues of things like that, I will drive you all to his website, because you can reach me, because we connected. We are one.
Yes.
And his website is michaelwwaters.com. And I will, if I can, plug his book real fast.
Yes,
For Beautiful
please.
Black Boys. Yes. So he has written a book called For Beautiful Black Boys Who Believe in a Better World. And it is a story based on our life experiences of living in communities that have been marginalized and dealing with gun violence and police brutality, and how those experiences have impacted particularly our son, who at the time when all these happenings started was around 5 or 6 years old. And so it really is about how we can talk with our children about these ongoings, and how we can help them envision a better world and how they can be a part of that process. It also has a study guide, a conversation guide that is done by the Muhammad Ali Center out of Louisville. And so for those of you who are interested in resources to help have discussions with your kids about issues of race and social justice and gun violence and police brutality, please pick up that book, For Beautiful Black Boys Who Believe in a Better World.
YULISE, thank you so much for being on the show. This is another episode of The Tapestry. I'm Dr. Francois Booker Drew, and thanks for joining us today.